I lost a part of my body in Sweden without my consent. It was the most traumatic experience of my life, and the last 4 years I really struggled processing my feelings about it. But today I'm going to share the story with you because I genuinely want to save as many young women as possible. Just so you know, this video is not meant to blame anyone. The intention is to raise awareness of women's health, especially ovarian cysts and ovarian torsion. It is a very common thing to happen among young women. Just knowing about it and what would happen in the end, like my case, would make a huge difference for you in the near future. So watch this video till the end, even if it feels irrelevant for you right now. And even though what I'm gonna share is a horrible story, I want you to remember that I'm not here to create negative energy at all. I see my social media as a tool to help and encourage people to try new things, even if it's traveling to a new country. This video has a very different angle from my daily vlogs, but the goal is always the same. If I could help and encourage even a single person, that would make me happy. It happened in 2022. I was in Sweden doing a 2-year master program. I lived alone, and it was about 6 months before graduation. Before that, I was in Denmark for about 3 years, so I spent about 5 years in those 2 countries. Since I lived in Sweden for 2 years, I had my personal number. It's like social security number in America. So I had access to their public health care system. Moving to what happened. This all happened within a week. I was traveling in Stockholm, which was several hours away from my hometown in Sweden by train. It was near the end of the trip and I was going home in 3 days. And for those 2 to 3 days, I started having stomach pain in my lower belly. At first it felt like cramps, but I hadn't had my period and cramps for 2 years because of an IUD, so the pain was unusual for me. And it gradually got worse and I woke up at 5 a.m. due to severe pain. Painkiller used to work when I had cramps before getting an IUD, but this time they didn't help at all, so I started to worry. One morning I feel like I should go to a hospital in Stockholm, so I called 1177, which was the Swedish National Healthcare Service where you can get medical advice or appointments to see your doctor. The nurse asked me some questions and I explained all the symptoms that I had and basically told me to wait and see until I go back to my hometown. I wasn't even surprised by that answer because that's how the Swedish healthcare system really is. Basically, if you're not that close to dying, they tell you wait and see. Even once, elderly Swedish local told me that if you want to see a doctor here in Sweden, you have to make it sound really serious. The pain kept coming and going, so I convinced myself it was fine. I kept traveling because I didn't want to break my travel plan. But over the couple of days, the pain got even worse and it reached to the point where I felt like, okay, this is really bad. And I went home by train as planned, but I couldn't even stand straight or sit normally. I was bent over 90 degrees in pain. I couldn't think of anything because of how bad it hurt. On Thursday, after arriving in my town, I went to the emergency room. The nurse took my blood from my finger and told me I might have diabetes, which didn't make sense at the time. Then I was taken to a bed around 10 p.m. That was the start of the worst night of my life because I had to wait for 8 hours to see a first doctor. I say first doctor because in the end, 10 different doctors saw me and no one could figure out why I was in pain. I wasn't given any pain medication. The pain just went through the roof. I couldn't sleep at all. I wanted to scream so bad. It felt like my stomach getting squeezed and stuffed at the same time. The pain was so intense that I couldn't even call a nurse. On Friday, like I said, I was seen by about 10 doctors in total and I had to explain the situation from the start 10 times. Each doctor had a different opinion, which was really confusing as a patient. I had blood test 5 times, urine test twice, x-ray once, and ultrasound 3 times. Ultrasound was very uncomfortable because 6 to 7 doctors came into the room and saw me without any cover. If you have been to a gynecologist, you know how you get checked, right? I wasn't given any food or basic needs for 24 hours. When I finally asked for food, this is what I got. Apple juice and a slice of bread. Because of COVID, there was a rule at the time at the hospital. Patients over 18 cannot bring anyone. So I wasn't allowed to have anyone with me. As an international who couldn't fully understand medical English, I felt very lonely, worried and scared. Couldn't even look at my phone to text or call my family who were in Japan because of how bad the pain was. And I was brought to a gynecologist department and the scan department because they suspected a kidney stone or appendicitis. After all of that, I was informed there were no abnormalities to my fallopian tube or my ovaries. So they sent me home saying I was fine and that I don't need an emergency surgery. At the very end, they said cyst might causing something. So they told me to check next week to see if the cyst gets smaller over the weekend. And I got the strongest painkiller that kept me alive, got 3 to 4 tablets, and basically survived the weekend. That's when I finally could text my mom who were in Japan. When I was discharged, they told me I will receive a call on Monday to schedule an appointment with an ultrasound specialist. On Saturday and Sunday, the pain moved to a different area. And both on Saturday and Sunday, I woke up with pain and I took the painkillers they gave me. And on Monday, I did not receive any call. So on Tuesday, I called them and I was told to wait a bit more. And on Wednesday, I called them again. And the nurse told me that ultrasound specialist who was supposed to see me went on vacation for 2 weeks. It's crazy, right? I finally got an appointment to the next day, which is Thursday. I went to see the specialist at 8 a.m. and she immediately found an ovarian tube twisted because of a 6-centimeter cyst. I was then told that I needed an urgent surgery within an hour. I was so shocked and nervous because I wasn't mentally ready and I had never had surgery before. Before the surgery, I just wanted to make sure I understand everything correctly, so a Swedish person listened to the explanation in Swedish and explained it to me in English. And I listened to her explanation in English directly from her. I was only told it's gonna be a laparoscopic surgery and that they would just untwist my right fallopian tube. I took a shower for the surgery and then walked to the operating room with the surgeon. We were casually talking like, what's your name? What are you doing in Sweden? And I lay down on a very warm bed in a room, which surprised me because I thought I would be brought in on a bed. I inhaled the anesthesia. Within 3 seconds, I fell asleep. I woke up in the resting room and I was told that my right tube had been removed because it was already dead and could have caused problems in other part of my body. At the moment, I couldn't really think of anything because I was still numb, but I remember I was thinking, they removed my tube? What? Several hours after the surgery, I finally realized that this should not have happened without any prior notice or consultation. But I didn't even feel anger. I just felt very sad because my doctor told me that the chance of getting pregnant had decreased by 10 to 20%, which I know now it is not entirely true after hearing from doctors in America. I've been trying to be positive about it, but I will never know until I get pregnant. So that's still a huge concern for me. The next morning on Friday, a nurse asked me, can you stand and walk? I said yes, even though it was really tough. And I walked to the breakfast place and I ate a little. And then I went home by myself and by walk and by bus. Several people told me to report what happened because it is a malpractice. But I was so drained, both mentally and physically. It had been such a horrible experience that I just wanted to move on. So I didn't do anything. I also learned this in Sweden, that people report malpractice mainly to prevent future accidents, while in the US, it's more about punishing the doctor. I recovered well after that. I hadn't had any pain since then, which I'm very grateful for, but this became a major reason why I left Sweden. 2 years later, I got a letter at my home in Japan from the hospital. It said something might have gone wrong during my surgery because several similar cases had happened. They also asked me to write them back if there was anything wrong with my surgery. So I sent a letter back and explained everything that had happened and I asked for compensation. Later, I received another letter saying no one remembered my case because it had been a long time ago and that they were closing my case together with the signature of the manager. I remembered feeling it was unfair because then what's the point of sending the letter in the first place? I also felt anger at the time, but regardless of whether I could have compensated or anything, my tube won't come back, so it felt pointless to fight over. I also felt bad knowing there are other women that had gone through similar situations as me. When I look back at what happened, there was clearly a lack of proper medical assessment, misdiagnosis, and neglect during my emergency room visit. However, I'm not saying that the Swedish healthcare system is bad. I went to my home doctor in Sweden a few times. There were no problems. The people at the hospital were always kind and supportive. I just feel like it mostly comes down to how they prioritize patients. So now I try to think that while I was in extreme pain at the hospital in 2022, they were saving many other lives. I still believe they could have figured out my case much sooner than the surgery right away and saved my tooth. But in emergency situations, the timing of who gets seen can sometimes go wrong, and some patients end up suffering from it, like this time. I truly believe most ear doctors doing their best to save as many lives as possible, so I see my case a very unlucky one. It sounds strange, but sometimes I think it happened at the time for a reason, because otherwise I wouldn't have met Dai, the person who I decided to spend the rest of my life with. I was also able to shine light on my perspective as a patient to Dai, a future ear doctor. We started our new life together in Utah, and there will definitely be many obstacles ahead, but this experience has really shaped how I am today and made me strong as a person. For those of you who are going to Sweden, traveling in Sweden and living in Sweden are completely different things. The longer I stayed, the more I saw both pros and cons of living there, just like any other place. Living in Sweden was a great experience of my life. I made many friends and I learned so much during my time there. But especially if you're from a country like Japan, where you can go to hospitals almost anytime, you might be surprised by how hard it can be to see a doctor in Sweden. So my advice is very simple. If you plan to go to Sweden to study or work for a longer period of time, get a health check before you go. And whenever you visit your home country while you live in Sweden, get a checkup even if you're healthy. It really helps. Because until this, I was healthy and I had no problems. You never know what can happen when you're away from your home country. Lastly, I'd like to say again that this video is not meant to blame anyone in the Swedish healthcare. I truly believe the people around me at the time did the best they could. I shared this because I don't want anyone to feel as lonely as I felt. Please like, share, and save this video. It means a lot to me, and I hope my story can be a help for even one person to notice something early or feel less scared. If you or someone around you have similar symptoms as me, please get checked at an emergency room as soon as possible. To be honest, even now, small things can still trigger these memories. I avoided thinking about it for a long time, but I decided to face it and move forward. If you've been through something traumatic too, please remember you are not alone. I'm still healing myself. It really takes time, so don't be too hard on yourself. Take baby steps at a time, and you're gonna be alright someday.